Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Point Spread. I'm Travis Justice, and if you are watching this show tonight and not the World Series, that may be an indication that you have a gambling problem. And, well, that's perfectly okay, but if you do have a gambling problem, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. If you want to join the show tonight, we'd love to take your phone calls, and you can do that by calling 402-543-5556. Again, we are here to take your questions and answer them because, well, our guest, Scott Spreitzer, always has the answers. So, again, this is a live call-in show if you have questions, 402-543-5556. If you have not started following us on the social media channels, please do so. If you're watching right now on YouTube, just hit that subscribe button. It's very simple. Make sure to like the Doc Talk Sports Facebook page. Follow Dr. Rob on Twitter at Doc Talk Sports, and you can follow me on Twitter at Travis Creates. And again, 402-543-5556 is the number to call. We do not have Dr. Rob Zatechka tonight because, well, Dr. Rob Zatechka is a doctor, and it's the busy season, Scott. And once you get into November, you know what you have to do before the end of the year? You got to get if you've already spent your deductible, you got to get all your surgeries in, right? I mean, so,
there you go. There's a quota.
Well, there kind of is. It kind of seems that way. It's like he's like, from here on out till through December, he's like, I'm doing surgeries till late at night because, well, people got to spend their money. So yeah, the World Series going on behind me. Who do you got money on the World Series tonight?
Yeah, it's going in front of me right now too. In fact, if you see me doing this, people who are watching, I'm not rolling my eyes at something Travis says. I'm actually looking up at the game, and I put a few bucks. I put some a little bit of money on the Houston Astros in what is a virtual must-win game, not must-win, but virtual. It would be hard to imagine them coming back from down 3-1. So we're looking at a scoreless game in the third inning, bottom of the third right now. So yeah, we'll see.
It's interesting. Before we dive into college football, which we're going to do, promise we got 4 games to look at tonight. Some really good games that are coming up in college football. And we'll also get to that Nebraska game as the Huskers are a 16-point underdog, and we'll dive into that. But baseball has a unique opportunity here. I was talking about this morning on my radio show. And that is, this could be a good year for the fans to get back in baseball. I think fans have kind of drifted away, but you look at the 5-run comeback in the first game, you look at the 5 home runs last night. If this goes 7 games, I think the fan interest will get back into baseball a little bit. Because last night's game would be one of those, oh my God, do you remember when they hit 5 home runs in a game? I remember when Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs in a World Series. So last night would be like, even if the Phillies don't win, you'd be like, I remember the Phillies hit 5 home runs in one game.
You've got great storylines across the board in this. Yep. Dusty Baker, a lot of people rooting for him to win his first World Series ring after having come so close with a couple of different teams. And as far as, Philly is concerned, you got guys making – I mean, like a guy like Bryce Harper, who has really matured into being a leader in the dugout and on the field. He was – I don't want to say this like over the top prima donna, but he was close, coming out of school. And how could he not be? I mean, the kid's 16 years old. He's playing college baseball. He's on the Sports Illustrated cover at the age of 16. He's the next Babe Ruth. So, there was a little bit of that going on, and he deserved it, by the way. I was, of course, already here in Vegas when he was coming up, and he was just an unbelievable player. I've never seen anything like it before or since him in any sport. From being able to watch a guy and see the talent that he has. So there's that. There's some great pitching matchups and scenarios in this series. And then, of course, you got Houston, who did away with the New York Yankees, and everybody hates the Yankees west of the Hudson, right? So yes. It's like, you've got all this intrigue. The only thing I didn't like about Major League Baseball this year, and I'm glad they don't use it during the playoffs, is the ghost runner at second in extra innings. Drives me out of my freaking mind, Travis. And I have not played a full game under since they instituted the ghost man on second in extra innings during that COVID campaign. And I really do hope they get rid of it. It's softball rules. It's crap, So yeah. I play first 5 unders when I want to play a low-scoring game because of it, but we don't have that in the World Series or the playoffs, which is good news.
I'm 100% there with you. So let's start tonight's show. Again, if you want to give us a call, 402-543-5556 is the number to call. The first game up tonight, this should be a good one. Clemson at Notre Dame. The spread has Clemson at 3.5. The over-under at 44. Notre Dame with a nice win last week. Clemson comes in number 4 in the first college football playoff rankings. I got to be honest with you. I think they're overrated. I'm not sold on Clemson here. Tell me what you think.
A lot of people,
not in this game, but I mean,
right? No, I get you. A lot of people think they're overrated. I mean, a lot of people do. And again, not in this game. I already bet Clemson in this game, but they might be a little bit overrated when it comes to where they sit in the college football playoff rankings. They are in this game power rated 9 points better than Notre Dame on a neutral field if you look at legitimate quality power ratings. So if you like Notre Dame, do you feel South Bend, Notre Dame Stadium is worth 6 points or more? That's what you're asking here when you're talking about a line of 3.5. I don't think it is. They've already lost to Marshall at Notre Dame Stadium. They lost to Stanford. They were in a struggle to the very end against California at this venue. So then you've got a situation where you've got the 106th ranked team in passing yards per game, the Irish, going up against a Clemson team that doesn't budge against the run. So yeah, their offense is down when you talk about Clemson. Their defense is just fine. And you got to ask yourself, do I want Drew Pine, who's a 49% passer the last 3 games for the Irish, and 4 touchdowns, all of a sudden going to find his accuracy against a Clemson defense? I don't think you will. You can't run on Clemson. There are only 6 teams better than them in yards rushing per game allowed. So they're going to, you know what they're going to do? They're going to stack up against the run. They're going to force Drew Pine and the Notre Dame passing game to try to beat them. And I just don't think they have the ability to do that. Another metric, Notre Dame, as far as their defense is concerned, nobody is worse in college football. I'll say that again. Nobody's ranked lower in college football than Notre Dame when it comes to red zone defense. And on the flip side, Clemson has scored in 38 of 39 red zone possessions. So I think the Irish really have their work cut out for them. And Travis, I got this really cool stat that I wanted to throw at Doc Rob, because every once in a while he gets a little bored with our general conversation when it comes to football. And I said,
you think so? You know, because he's intellectually smarter than us, right? I mean, he's so far above where we are. Because if you throw this metric at me, I'm probably not going to figure it out. But what were you going to throw to Dr. Rob tonight?
I wanted to show him that some of us handicappers do employ mathematics and science. And but I do see the look on his face at times when you and I are thinking we're having this ingenious conversation, and he's over there talking to his dog. You know, so anyway, I'll tell you one of the things about this Notre Dame team. You got first of all, you got Will Shipley for the Clemson Tigers, who ought to have a big game running the football here. And I put these on paper because I wanted to make sure I didn't botch this. But the Irish have one of the worst defensive rush success rates in all of college football. They're like 100th. Out of 131 teams. Here's what that means. When you talk about a success rate metric, and this is one of my keys to my handicapping in college football, yards per point, defensive success rate, offensive success rate. So here's what it is. A play is defined as success or as successful if it gains at least 50% of yards required to move the chains on first down. It's considered successful if you get 70% of the yards that are required to gain for a first down on second down. And it's considered successful if you get 100% of the yards you need to gain on third or fourth down. So to calculate the success rate, you divide the number of successful plays, according to what I just said, by the total amount of plays. And you could use this on either offense or defense. And an example of this is that, for instance, and I think we've talked about this part of this metric before, gaining 5 yards on 1st and 10 means a whole lot more than gaining 5 yards on 3rd and 15. And the problem with traditional stats and metrics is that they're going to just show up and say, you know, Notre Dame allows X amount of yards gained per game or X amount of yards gained per play.
I mean,
go ahead.
That's NCAA statistics right there, right? I mean,
Yes.
total. I mean, Illinois is the best defense in the country. Is it really the best defense in the country?
Right. So you put in these success rate metrics, and you really find out how good offenses and defenses are. So Notre Dame, having thrown that into the mix and basically telling you when teams are gaining or being held a certain amount of yards by the Irish when it comes to their run defense, they're like 100th in college football. Throw out all that garbage about yards gained per game, yards gained, per rush and all that kind of stuff per game. And you get down to the real meat of it all. And I'm really, really disappointed that people are forcing Doc Rob to be in surgery right now, because I thought he'd go, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Okay, my question is, you don't do this all manually. Do you have like a program you throw that into, or do you even pay for a service that gives you like all that information?
I have certain places that I go to that will track this. And they're obviously, I used to have to do this by hand when I first started doing metrics. I mean, this is why, for instance, on a Saturday night, 15, 20 years ago, probably 20 years ago, closer than 15, where the games get over with at, let's say, 10 p.m. my time, Pacific time, and I'm up till 5 or 6 in the morning, and I'm looking at box scores, and I'm looking at drive charts, kind of like a coach would, and I'm writing down drive charts, and I'm writing down play-by-play. Team X gets, an average of 2.8 yards on 1st and 10. They stink. They're not ahead of the chains. And I used to actually keep that myself. Now there are services and sites out there where it's done for you. And
Interesting.
It just makes life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, it really just went over my head. This is why I bet with my heart and why I'm usually broke when it comes to betting. And you do, for the record, you do have money on Clemson on this game, right?
Oh yeah, I played Clemson. I did lay the 3.5. This is a big difference in my power ratings of 6. We're talking 2.5 points. So for me, a 2.5 point difference in my number is pretty big on where I have a team power rated over another team. And again, I just think, the Irish, it's also matchups. I used to be 90% matchups. Now I'm probably 35% matchups, 65% situations, and those metrics I just told you about. But my gosh, if Clemson plays their style and Notre Dame plays to what they've done all year, Clemson should be able to just run the football at this team all day long.
Next game is intriguing because, again, the college football playoffs came out yesterday. Tennessee, kind of a surprise number 1. They went non-traditional. We knew Tennessee would be ranked probably in the top 4 somewhere. I did not anticipate Tennessee being number 1 in the country. Georgia, you're defending national champions. So already you've got number 1 against number 3 in the college football playoff poll. Georgia at home, an 8-point favorite.
Now, listen, Travis, I'm not saying that Tennessee can't win this game. Obviously, they can. They can pull the upset. But can we get legitimate bettors and odds makers, at least one or two, at least one, on this playoff voting committee? They make Tennessee number 1 in the country. I'm okay with that. They make Georgia number 3 in the country. Okay, great. And then Las Vegas comes around and says number 3 is 8 points better than Tennessee, the number 1 team. It just shows you that they don't understand the metrics of college football, the folks that are deciding who's going to play each other potentially in the Final Four. It drives me nuts.
Well, and I even went to the futures this morning. I went to Betfred. You can go to a lot of different places. Georgia, I think, was the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. Right. Ohio State, number 2. Tennessee was like at I don't know, like plus 600 or plus 1,000, like 4 or 5 on the list. I mean, it wasn't even when you look at the futures. So you're right. You got number 1, an 8-point underdog. That's striking.
Yes, and it means that even be an underdog on a neutral field. No field in college football is worth 8 points. Although when they play between the hedges, it's a pretty big home field advantage for the Georgia Bulldogs. Just ask the Oregon Ducks. But yeah, I mean, get on oddsmaker on this playoff committee if you really want to have serious input from the number standpoint. When you get to the
Scott, people would lose their shit if that happened. You know that, right? I mean, people would be like, "Oh my God, Vegas is infiltrating the college football playoff." I mean, they would scream corruption right away. And I agree with you. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I would say the best chance scenario of this ever happening would not be a bettor; it would be an odds maker. It would be a legitimate odds maker with a big track record of doing everything on the up and up. Decent guy, the whole thing that everybody knows. That's what they should be doing. I mean, they should have an odds maker on there talking about the stats. And from what I just talked about, the success rates on offense and defense, the EPA, I guess it's called, where you have, again, tracking how teams do in certain situations. Again, 5-yard gain on 3rd and 20 means nothing. Yeah. So, they just get caught up in all these, I guess, easy to find, easy to check out stats and all that kind of stuff. And again, I'm not saying Tennessee cannot win this football game. There's certain things that can happen on the field where Tennessee comes up and wins this. But when you get to the goods of this handicap, Tennessee's offense has been fantastic. We all know that. They faced nothing but zone defenses all year. Kirby Smart loves man coverage. So they're going to throw a lot of man coverage at Tennessee. There's going to be some zone mixed in. And we'll see if Hendon Hooker is as good as we think he is, because he's going to have to face a defensive scheme that he really hasn't seen this year. And not just a different scheme, but one that is as talented as there is in college football when it comes to that secondary. They do have one little advantage here. It's not that little. Nolan Smith is out. He got hurt for Georgia last week. He is their key figure when it comes to sack rate. And Georgia's sacks are way down at this point of the year over where they were last year. I still think Travis, man, I'm a Heupel fan. I love the style of football he's brought to Knoxville. I still think Georgia finds a way to win this by 10. I did not bet the game, but I think they win this game like 38-28, 34-24, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Oh, so you're even probably would take the under if you did ink. Is it what 34? I'm trying to.
Well, 38-28 would be right there.
Yeah,
34. Yeah. It's to the point where I lean under, but I'm not going to bet it because you can see, these two teams get into a scoring fest all of a sudden. And if you get any kind of short field situation, they're both so strong on the offensive side of the football, they can turn a turnover at the other team's 35 into 6 points, in the snap of your fingers. So it's, again, I think it's about a 10-point win for Georgia. Not betting on it because I will not be shocked if this goes to the wire or you get a backdoor cover out of Tennessee. They're never going to stop throwing the football in this game. And again, it's just a situation, though, that bothered me. And the reason I want to talk about the game is because you got to have new thinking when it comes to the playoff committee. It can't be just, hey, they beat Alabama. Okay, great. That's awesome. It was a fantastic, game by Tennessee. It took Alabama to have one of their worst disciplined games of all time, under Saban, to win by 3 at home in overtime, but I still get it. But to not know the power ratings really does bother you because you sit there and you're going, man, I just want to see a true Final Four.
I'm right there with you, man. I think that'd be intriguing. I think it'd be interesting. I think it'd be, it would add a completely different perspective that needs to be added to that college football playoff committee. Again, if you want to join the show, you can 402-543-5556, 402-543-5556. Interesting game for the Iowa Hawkeyes as they go to Purdue this weekend. It's a reunion, should we say, with Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones, one of the best receivers in the country, and really left Iowa where he had 21 career catches altogether. He's got like 77 already this year with Purdue. And now, Iowa fans are playing what if? And Kirk Ferentz has deflected most of that. And what if? I don't think you can have a what if because Purdue plays a completely different style of offense than Iowa does, and Charlie Jones would not have had the same amount of catches or even performed the same amount because the offenses are completely different.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. He's not going to be churning out this kind of a season with the Iowa Hawkeye offense. He wouldn't hurt the team, that's for sure. They could use his help, but he wouldn't be out there, grabbing 5-6 catches a game in all likelihood. But, boy, it's the same old every week. The Hawkeyes are bad on offense and they play well on defense. Last week we talked about Iowa Northwestern or whatever that was, and I don't know if it was this show or not, but I had talked about Iowa winning by 14. I didn't bet it. I said I'm not touching the Iowa Hawkeyes Northwestern game. They ended up getting the win and cover by 20. We did have Ohio State the week before, and I thought that wasn't as bad as it looked. You give up 360 yards or whatever it was, and you get beat 54-10. Your defense wasn't as bad as that final score would indicate. But you could have grabbed 6.5 if you liked Iowa on Sunday afternoon when the line first opened offshore. Obviously, I didn't because I'm not going to get involved with the Iowa games. They're still number one on defense in yards allowed. I mean, I just won't. And that's not just a shot against Iowa. It's a shot against the Big Ten. Do I want Northwestern? Hell no. Do I want them last week? Do I want Purdue, which, they can't run the football? I don't want Purdue. They can't run the football. They're a one-dimensional offense going up against a very good Iowa defense. Do I want Iowa's offense? Heck no. So it's like there's way too many check marks in the no column. If you're an accountant and what is it, assets you have on one side, liabilities on the other, there's about 45 liabilities and 3 assets. And one of those assets is the forecast when it comes to the weather, which might be high winds. In that case, it helps out the Hawkeyes because Purdue can't run. And if they can't throw deep downfield, stretch the defense a little bit, they're in trouble. I don't know, man. I see this game and I think this is glorified Maction without that great slogan, Maction. I mean, I don't mean to rip people apart for being Iowa or Purdue fans, but it is what it is. So I got to pass this one. Check out, I told the folks this on a video I did earlier today. And I'm like, if you want to get involved with this game, keep track of where the winds are and what the forecast is, because if there are high winds, it benefits Iowa. And it also benefits that under because, again, Purdue is not able to run the football. If they can't stretch the defense, they're sitting ducks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Everybody was excited, and a lot of people know that I host the Iowa Hawkeye Call-In show after the game, and that's why we do Iowa games. Rob we save the Husker game for last because that's for Dr. Rob, but we always do the Iowa game because I do the Iowa games, at least the call-in show. And everybody's excited. A lot of people, the offense made strides. I'm like, they played Northwestern. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if you can. Sure, they didn't turn the ball over. They didn't make that many mistakes, but they played Northwestern. What does that mean? It means nothing.
Worst team in the Big Ten. Even though they beat Nebraska, they're the worst team in the Big Ten. I got power ratings right here. I was going to let you know what I have them power rated as Northwestern. Right now, if Rutgers and Northwestern, which are my two worst teams in the Big Ten, were to match up on a neutral field, Rutgers would be a 4-point favorite. Nebraska would be just a half a point better than Rutgers on a neutral. So they'd be 4.5 to 5 points favored over Northwestern on a neutral, even though they lost to Northwestern earlier this year. So it was Northwestern. You're absolutely right.
So before we dive into the Nebraska game, let's go into Nebraska a little bit, because you were texting me earlier about Nebraska's power rankings and how the Huskers have really slid from when the season started to where they are right now. Go into that and explain to people what your power ratings are, what that really means, and how far Nebraska has slid to this point in the season.
In August, Nebraska, in all the quality power ratings, and there's probably about 5 or 6 power ratings that I use from a couple of guys in my circle, my own, and then a couple from outside my circle, and I get all these power ratings. We do them every Sunday after the games have gone final the night before. We update our power ratings. Before the season began, Nebraska, by just about everybody's power ratings that I trust, were top 30. They were anywhere from 25th to 30th. They're now 80th in college football out of 131 teams. They and Miami, Florida are the biggest drops from where their preseason power ratings had them. You remember Miami was like in the top 15. They were around 10th to 11th power rating wise before the season began. They've dropped all the way down into the high 50s. So both of those teams have lost a good 12, 13, 14 points off of their power rating since August. Right now, again, Nebraska's 80th, Travis, which, I mean, when you look at some of the teams in front of them, you're talking Stanford, Western Kentucky, San Jose State is a point ahead of Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
Duke, Arizona State, South Alabama. When in your lifetime did you ever think you would be talking about Nebraska being a 1 or 2 point underdog to the teams I just mentioned? On a
never in my lifetime.
Exactly.
Never.
That's how far they've dropped since August.
Wow. 402-543-5556. Let's go to the phones. That's where Brad is. Brad, welcome to Behind the Point Spread. You are on with Scott Spreitzer. What's going on, man?
Yeah, hey, great show. Hey, before I have a question, but before I got a quick story I think you'll like.
Okay.
Anyway, I signed up for Doc Sports after your second show, and I've been following you guys, and I've read all on the website how the unit plays and how it all works, and I've been very disciplined, very religious about everything, and I've done very well, and very well. And then last week I got confused about why I was doing well, and my favorite handicapper released his pick, and it was Missouri. And so I checked it out a little bit. I don't really care for it too much, and so of course I do my own studying and come up with my own pick. Anyway, Saturday rolls around at 2:30. I watched the game, and Missouri was in control the whole game. They didn't completely dominate, but they won outright, and they were a dog. And I'm like, okay, I maybe should have put something on it. I didn't put any. I put my betting allotment on my pick. So my pick come on at 6:00, and I was getting 12 points with Kentucky. And in 20 minutes, I watched my money get flushed down the toilet, and it was a good lesson for me that I'm an idiot and don't know anything and to stick to the script. But anyway, so here's my question. So earlier this year, I was watching the Oklahoma TCU game, and of course, I think this is the week after Oklahoma destroyed Nebraska, and Oklahoma's down there, and they just get punched in the mouth. And not only did they get punched in the mouth by TCU, they got humiliated. It was the whole, the taunting, the smack talking, the dancing around, and they're getting noses rubbed in it. And I'm thinking, oh boy, next year in Norman, when they don't have Dugan, this may be different. So here's my question for Scott. How much does revenge play into you when you handicap games? And do you take notes on stuff like that? Do you stick in the back of your mind? And that's really it. And thanks for everything. I love the show.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it, man.
I first want to let Brad know that even though I had Missouri as a top play last week, I had a very small play on Kentucky. He wasn't the only one. So, and Tennessee just beat the crap out of him, beat him 6 ways to Sunday. But we did have the top play on Mizzou. That was nice. And nice of Brad to mention that. But I wanted to say real quick that, when it comes to revenge, especially in professional sports, I think it is highly overvalued and overrated. I'll give you an example in the NFL. Last week on Sunday, my top play was New England. over the Jets. New England they ended up winning the game by 5. They're up 22-10, final minute, Jets score a touchdown to make it a little bit closer, but they still cover New England. And last time these two teams met, Patriots won both of last year's meetings. So the last time they met last year, the final score was 54-13 in favor of the Patriots. And all I see on Twitter when it comes to the Jets last week is their defensive coordinator talking about, when he's asked by the media, oh yeah, that's in the back of my mind. New England didn't let up. They kept throwing the football on us. They kept scoring touchdowns late, even though it was a blowout. They beat us 54-13. Oh yeah, it's in the back of my. Then they get beat again. I used to say this when Nebraska was good in football. And I used to say, if revenge is a big part of your handicapping angle, you're 0-27 the last 27 years on Kansas over Nebraska. Back in those days, you've lost, 20 of your last 21 against Kansas State.
Yep.
So stuff like that. There are certain situations in college football when you have a big name program. Brad talked about Oklahoma, TCU. You got a big name program that got their rear ends kicked in from the start, from the opening kickoff to the final second clicked off the clock. That is something that they will take and keep in their minds next year. But to me, it's like when it comes to major college football, but especially the pros, that emotion, it lasts maybe a series. And then it's all of a sudden who's making the plays, who's got the better quarterback, who's maybe coached up a little bit better. And I got to look at that next year because it is something I wrote down, Brad, if you're still listening. It's something I earmark, shellacking of a major program by an upstart, so to speak, no offense to TCU. And I'll mark it and I'll say, okay, I want to see how these teams are playing leading into this, because if you still have the same coaching mistakes being made at OU that we saw so far this year, then revenge isn't going to mean a whole lot to me. So I hope that best answers your question, because especially in pro sports, I think the revenge angle is way overblown when it comes to handicapping.
At the end of the day, talent usually wins out, right?
Talent, coaching, the ability to not turn the ball over, that all comes into play and means a lot more.
All right, let's dive into. I hit the wrong one. Let's. How are we doing that? There we go. Let's go here. I've got buttons all over the place. Minnesota at Nebraska. Minnesota -16. This line is unbelievable, Scott. Unbelievable. Nebraska 16-point underdog at home to Minnesota. I still can't believe it.
Yeah, it's at least a touchdown higher than it would have been, I think, if Casey Thompson wasn't injured. And you're talking probably Minnesota in that 8-10 range, tops 10, and probably more likely around 8 or 9. And the only reason they'd be higher than 7.5 is because Nebraska, after Thompson went out last week, they just did absolutely nothing. Couldn't gain anything at all on the offensive side of the football. I'm watching the first half of that game. I have to run down to the Circa on Saturdays and do a show for VSiN down there for 3 hours, but I'm kind of watching that good chunk of the first half of the Nebraska game, and they're moving the football. They gained over 200 yards against a stout Illinois defense. And then, of course, Casey Thompson gets hurt, and they can't gain an inch after that. And so, to me, it's like, I know that number is huge, 16, but if Thompson's unable to go, you got Logan Smothers. Listen, he might be a great guy, man, and I know a lot of people like him. They want to see him out there. Is he really a Power 5 starting quarterback? You've got Chubba Purdy. I got a buddy of mine in Phoenix that has a quarterback in school, used to play in the NFL, used to play for Kansas State in college in the 70s, who works with the Purdy family. He works with a lot of guys who have become quarterbacks over the last 10, 15 years in college football. So I don't want to say too much here, but right now at this stage of his college career, every time I see Purdy,
he ain't Brock.
No, he's not only not Brock, but he looks like he's in panic mode all the time. And I saw a presser by Mickey Joseph. It might have been last night or on YouTube. I was watching it. And he talked about, we got to let this kid know, you got to relax, man. And if the opening's not there to throw the football, throw it away. Run with the football, even if you lose a yard. And a perfect example was last week when they're down 20-9. They're in field position to attempt a field goal at the very least. He's out there pushing the panic button and throwing a pick. The next thing you know, Illinois goes up 23-9. So you want to play that, or do you want to play a quality coached Minnesota team who has had issues at quarterback? They had to start a freshman a couple of weeks ago. But we got the better coaching staff, if you like Minnesota.
And you got a better running back. Ibrahim's awesome.
You got arguably, at least, before his injury last year or the year before, whatever it was, to me at that time, he was the best running back in college football. And so you got the better offense. You've got a team that knows what they're doing. And this isn't a knock against the Nebraska coaching staff, but as far as experience, I want Minnesota's coaching staff. And that's not, again, not a knock against Mickey or anybody else on this Nebraska coaching staff right now. They don't stop the run. They don't stop the pass. They can't move the ball if Casey Thompson's not out there. Minnesota's 12th on the ground. They're 16th against the run. Geez, I mean, it's Minnesota or nothing. So far, I've been Mr. Nothing. But, again, I can't back Nebraska in this situation without a Power 5 starting quarterback if Casey Thompson isn't on the field.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's just that 16 number is just hard to comprehend, right? I mean, it's just
well, you know what this is? This is revenge for an 84-13 Nebraska win in 1983. That's what I'm just kidding. Just
you and I. I'm sure there's some people watching this, but you and I are one of the few people that probably remember that game. I mean, that was that was a shellacking. Adam just asked me, point blank, is your team Iowa or Nebraska? Which is it, Travis? Listen, I've never hit it. Adam, if you listen to the podcast, if you watch us on YouTube, I'm an Iowa guy, right? I got the Hawkeye helmet right behind me. However, there is a Nebraska helmet there. I actually have a lot of Nebraska stuff here. I covered the team for over 20 years. It's not like I disrespect them, but I grew up in Iowa, and that's why Rob and I have a lot of fun doing this. And I'm able to give them a hard time. But Adam, that answers your question. I've never hidden from it. Not going to hide from it now. But we are glad you're watching Behind the Point Spread because
you know what, Travis, I was going to say real quick, I love all the blue because I'm a Nebraska football fan. As you know, I grew up back there. I don't bet with my heart, so I'll go against Nebraska if I feel it's right. But I see all the blue. I wore my blue shirt because when it comes to college basketball, it's Blue Jays, baby.
Yeah, and we got the Creighton pen. There's a Creighton pendant back there too. I've got the Heisman Trophy poster that was from when I covered Eric Crouch in 2001 winning the Heisman Trophy. My tickets is on that. So there's a piece of the old Nebraska press box up behind me too. That was my seat in the old press box. So I've got a lot of Nebraska memorabilia here. As the viewers just drop off, it's like
exactly they heard that
going downhill real quick.
And by the way, I'm not just a Creighton fan because of Coach McDermott. I was going to Omaha Civic Auditorium games when there would be 2,800 people in the stands back in the day when I was a kid. And Preston Love and that saxophone would be out there with his little pep band, playing in between timeouts and all that kind of stuff. So I go way back to the Tom Apke days.
Wow, that's impressive. Now, Adam comes back. He says, I might take Nebraska with the points because Minnesota by 16 is just way too high. Listen, that's a gut feeling. That's a dangerous way to bet, isn't it?
If he does power ratings and he thinks Minnesota's way too high, then more power to him. If he's doing it because he's a Nebraska fan or a fan of any team, that's scary. I mean, this is where that number should be as far as the books are concerned. Nebraska might come out and make this a close game and hang that number. But again, if it's not a power rated, if it's just I love Nebraska, make sure the bet's not more than you can afford.
And by the way, this is a guy who does it professionally, and he doesn't bet in quantity. He's very selective on the way he bets. And you heard Brad earlier talk about he got the subscription to Doc Sports, and I'm going to tell you how to do that in just a minute. But don't forget to watch the Doc's Diagnosis presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. We already have 3 this week up on the YouTube channel. Go ahead and go back. We look at a play that we told you a week ago was going to work for Illinois, and Nebraska didn't listen. We really break down the play action passing where Nebraska was successful against Illinois. And we take a look at Mo Ibrahim, who we just mentioned is one of the best running backs in the country. So check out the Doc's Diagnosis on the YouTube channel. Of course, if you want to work with Scott, you can do that. You can follow him at docsports.com. Make sure to follow him on Twitter as well. And if you want to work with Scott, text Doc Talk to 29022, and you're going to get a text link where you can have access to all of his important pages, like his daily free pick videos, as well as a page where you can sign up and get $60 in Scott's premium member only picks. Again, the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 for more free picks from Scott Spreitzer 7 days a week. And you heard Brad earlier, it works, and he's up a lot. If you want a free bet from Betfred Sports, make sure to download the Betfred Sports app today on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. When you download the app, create a new account, use the promo code DocTalk, and you're going to get a free $20 bet in Arizona, Colorado, and Iowa. Of course, tonight's show is for entertainment purposes only. And if you do have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Scott, any parting wisdom from you?
Yeah, that was me knocking on wood when you said he's up. I just got to do that. And also, Adam, I'm going to be rooting for you, man. I'm not going to be on the Nebraska-Minnesota game. I just want to see the Huskers play well, man. Eke something out, But anyway, it's been fun. Appreciate Brad calling in. Brad, don't feel too bad. Both of us had a little action on Kentucky. Missouri just happened to be the big play.
Yeah, you're going to lose some of them, man.
Yes.
And again, we do thank Brad for calling. Everybody who wrote in on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, thanks for that. For Scott Spreitzer, we wish that Dr. Rob comes back next week. He'll be with us. You'll come with more metrics for him, right? You'll map them out.
Yeah, I can't wait to have some fun with that.
Good stuff. Thanks for watching the Behind the Point Spread, brought to you by Betfred Sports. We'll see you next week, same time here on YouTube.